Greetings, YouTubers. Well, we're in the garage today, and I just wanted to show you something here on this 2009 Subaru 2.5 non-turbo single overhead cam. If you ever have to take the oil pan off, well, I got it off. I want to show you how I took it off. There may be some other videos out there on YouTube on how to do this. It's a little daunting, but it can be done. And of course, I'm in the garage, and I got the front wheels up on ramps. It just makes it a little bit easier to work around, to crawl around, and not hit your head 100 times on things. And by doing that, I do have a lot of clearance under here. It worked out pretty good. So in order to get this oil pan out, what I did up here on top, I went ahead first thing, got the air cleaner off. Pretty easy to do. It's sitting over there, and there is a motor mount right over here. There's one bolt that goes in it right here. Go ahead and unhook this, and it's loose, as you can see right there. Get this bolt out and just put it off to the side. And really, there's nothing else here to worry about. When you bring the engine up a little bit, what we're going to do, the hoses are a little tight. If you don't bring it up any more than maybe 3 inches or so, you'll be just fine. And that's the same with the hoses and all that. So once we got that off, you got a couple of oxygen sensors here. Just unhook these. Mine were never really hooked up, bolted up on the bracket. Just to disconnect those. And then after that, really the first thing you want to do is go ahead and start working on this exhaust. It's not terrible to get off, but I want to show you under here. My exhaust bolts were fairly easy to get off, and they're straightforward. Just 3 of them on each side. You get those off. And in the back here, there is a bracket that is bolted right there. You see that? Now, I had a little trouble getting mine off. I used MAP gas and just kind of heated it up a couple times and eventually broke loose. And it's actually laying right there all by itself on the floor upside down. Now my exhaust there, I just cut it. There's a straight pipe there. A piece of it was broken, and I kind of put a sleeve on it there. So I was able to slide it straight out. As a matter of fact, it was so tight, it didn't even leak. But that was good because I knew eventually I wanted to take this exhaust off down the road, and I did have a slight vibration. I think it's in the drive shaft, so that was good. Why I never really put a clamp on it or anything. So by me not doing that, it really paid me well to take this off like that. I just pulled it off, and it slid right off. And the exhaust is actually outside, and I'll go ahead and I'll show you real quick. So here it is, but in the back here, like I said, I just cut it off. Mine had a connector here, but it was all rotted anyway. And I wasn't going to spend a lot of money on another exhaust system, so I just, like I said, cut it, put a sleeve on it, and took care of it. Yours will have something here that'll let it flex a little bit, but you'll probably have to, maybe your bolts will be good enough you can take it off. I don't know. But right here is where that bolt is on that bracket. And here are the exhaust bolts. Pretty easy to take off. And why this is off here, matter of fact, my heat shield is rattling a little bit in a few places. This would be a good time to kind of maybe try to fix it from rattling and all that. So there's the front of the exhaust, and we're looking at it straight to the back. That's basically that there for the exhaust. And so that is that. So now let's just kind of spin around here and go back inside and go underneath. And the next thing I did was, actually after I got the exhaust off and everything, I went on ahead and loosened up a couple motor mount bolts right here. They're real easy to get to. One on this side, and there's one over here on that side. Take those out, and then get your little jack or something like that, like I've got, and some blocks of wood, which makes it a little bit easier, so you don't bend the oil pan. And just, where are they at? Oh, there they are. Okay. And go ahead and start jacking up the oil pan a little bit. Now you probably could do it back on the transmission, but by doing it up here, it's just going to be a lot easier to get this engine up. And what you do, as you do that, go ahead and get your wood ready. These are just pieces of 2x4 here that I've got kind of set up right here. And once this goes up, just stick it up under the motor mount right there. There's about, I don't know, maybe 2.5, 3 inches. And do the same thing on that side. And once you do that, the reason we have to do this is, you see right there, these bolt holes? Well, that is the back of that oil pan. you cannot get your hand up in there until you actually lift this engine up just a little bit. And once you get this up in the air, a couple, 3 inches, then there's just enough room to get a ratchet up in here and a wrench. Get in behind that oil pan and get those bolts there. The rest of them are real easy to get out. Once you do that, then you pop off the oil pan. Let's look at it real quick. And there is the back of this oil pan. You can see you got 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts that you have to kind of get your hand behind there like this to get to it, because you can see the way they shaped this oil pan right there in the back. The frame actually kind of sits right up, almost up against it right here on the bottom. So this is why the motor has to come up a little bit. And of course, you got your dipstick tube here. Pull your dipstick out, then you can just slide this off the housing, which is, of course, don't forget to drain your oil. I already did that, of course, which is right here. There's a couple of O-rings on it. Just kind of twist the oil pan a little bit and it should drop right off. And then, once you get the oil pan off, you're pretty much home free. You got your oil sump you got to take off, and you got this splash guard right here that you take off. And it's real easy to get these bolts out. These are all little 10mm bolts. And then, you can do whatever you need to do, especially if you need to go in there and just check and see which rod is knocking or something. Of course, I found one of my rods right there, bearings. Didn't spin, but something went terribly wrong. When I put it all back together, everything was perfect, but something was inside that crank, a piece of trash or something, and it got into the bearing, and it kind of scratched it up. And the engine had a slight knock in it, so I figured out it was this one right here. I'm glad, because the front one, I don't think I could do much with it, because you got this piece right here that's in the way. But if you turn this engine on the front here, like I got my ratchet set up, you can actually get in here and almost get these rod bearings out if you need to, and see if there's something wrong with it. But we can see the crank gear is polished up pretty nicely. Now I'm about ready to put it together, and this is the only reason I pulled this oil pan off. I wanted to get in there and see what was going on. So that is that. Hopefully this will help you out. This is how I got my oil pan off and all that. And on this bracket back here, let me show you this real quick. There's a little hook right there. See how it's kind of hooked? When you take that bolt off, you kind of push up on it and slide it out of that little hook there. So other than that, that's about it. I'm about ready to put this thing all back together. And before we wrap this video up, here are the new bearings that are going to go in it. These are fairly decent shape. Here's the ones that came out. You can see they were all the way down to the copper. It almost looks like something got in there through the oil journals. I don't know. It's kind of depressing, because I worked so hard and made sure everything was perfectly in, great condition. But you notice right there where my fingernail is, it almost looked like something got in there. So whatever it was, it ended up in the bottom of the oil pan, because I had some trash on my fingers there. You can see it right here. There's some stuff there. So this oil pan, all this was spick and span cleaned, and I didn't lose any oil pressure. So not sure what happened. There's a little bit of trash in there. We'll clean all that up and put it back together and put this cap on. And I think one other thing here I can tell you about really quick that might help you out if you want to try to get these caps off. And look at the bearing. Now the crazy thing is here, I used this Craftsman 72 teeth ratchet, and I got a 12mm 6-point socket. And if you turn this crank a certain way, there is just enough room to get this in here, and once you rock it back and forth, you can actually just get one click. That's it, one click, and you can take these bolts off if you have to take off your cap and see if it's bad or something. But that's how I did that. Of course, I got it set right now. I don't want to turn it, but that's how I got it. And you can see there's both rod bolts and all that. The bottom one's real easy to get to. The top one, you got to stick it up in there, turn the crank, then turn the crank, back it off, and as the crank turns, this will get closer and closer to the socket. Then you can grab the bolt or the nut and break it loose. And to make your life a little easier on this, breaking it off, get your ratchet, get your wrench, I should say, and put it on here like this, and help give you some torque, because they're on there pretty good. So hopefully this video helps you guys out and all that. That's the only reason I wanted to pull this oil pan off to see what happened. And that's where my little peck is. Hopefully we'll clean this up and put that new bearing in it. and we'll get some more miles out of it and all that. Alright guys, so that's it. Hey, let me know where you're watching from right now, and I hope this video helped you out. Until my next video, thanks for watching guys, and I will see you later. And by the way, you're probably wondering, well, how did he polish that? Well, there's my Harbor Freight sandpaper. I think these are 12 inches long. A little wire. I hook this around the crank, fish it back down, pull this around it, and I go to town, and I use both hands and go, and that's how I basically am getting the journal polished. Of course, I'll step down to 400. I start with 320, and I'll finish it up with 400 grit. So that's how I did that. This wire makes it easier to wrap around that crank and pull it down, because these do not like to bend. They just go straight up into the engine. That's how I'm polishing the crank. In case you want to try this, or if you have one bearing that's bad and you see it and you want to try to fix it, well, maybe this will help you out. But maybe you have to pull the engine out to do your project. Who knows?